All right, congratulations and great job for clicking on this ad. Why? Because that tells me something important about you. It tells me that you're curious about your own growth, your own mindset, and what's possible when you start to look beneath the surface. Most people never take that step of stepping into the psycho-spiritual work to unveil the deepest parts of yourself. My name's Justin, and I help people understand themselves on a deeper level. I help people move from burnout, anxiety, confusion, lack of life purpose, into clarity, purpose-driven, and rooted in power. So let's start with something simple and yet profound. The reality of our psychological blind spots. So our psychological blind spots, every one of us has blind spots. These are patterns, reactions that we can't see because we're inside of them. We're enmeshed within our blind spots. They shape how we think, how we love, how we lead, and of course, a blind spot is something that you do without seeing, right? So this is something deep in our childhood programming, cultural programming, ancestral programming, our very biology, survival mentality to stay safe, to stay alive. And oftentimes that sends us into avoidance and confusion. So Freud came up with this model, or this analogy rather, of the iceberg. So we have roughly 95% of our psyche is in the unconscious. 85% are things that we are unaware of and we can't become aware of it. 5% is our conscious awareness, things that are in our day-to-day. But the interesting piece here is the pre-conscious, things that we could become aware of if we wanted to and tried. This is where opportunity for growth lies. So this is Carl Jung's model. He mapped out the deeper landscape. He showed us that beneath personality are ancient patterns or archetypes that live within all of us, deep in our subconscious, that's even embedded deep within the collective unconscious. And I won't go into every piece of this model because we'll be here a while trying to dissect this model in particular. But deep here are the archetypes. These are styles of ways that we can exist in the world. These archetypes, they're universal forces that shape our motives, they shape our fears, and our potential. So Robert Moore built on Carl Jung's work. He identified 4 primary archetypal energies that govern human behavior. Now, he worked mostly with masculine archetypes, so he had the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. Others would later come around and bring through the queen, mother, wise woman, and lover. But the whole idea here is that we have an inflated and deflated pole of each one of these. The idea is that we have all 4 of them in us, whether masculine or feminine, but each one of them has the potential to become either inflated or deflated. And really what we're trying to do is to find the center of each one, the balanced center, because the inflated and the deflated are the shadow version. So when these energies are balanced, they create wholeness. But when they're distorted, they lead to anxiety, burnout, conflict, self-sabotage. They create a lot of problems in our life whenever we get over-identified with the passive or active version of each of these archetypes. And so just a handful of ways to point out the ways in which these archetypes can affect our lives. Just a few examples. The overthinker. This would be the anxious version of the magician archetype, constantly analyzing every choice, leading to indecision, sleepless nights, emotional exhaustion. So when the magician's insights turn into rumination, then anxiety follows. Then we have the burned out achiever. So the overextended warrior. This would be an inflated warrior archetype, feeling guilty when resting, running on adrenaline until the body forces a collapse. Burnout often hides unprocessed fear and the need to prove one's worth. Another one would be the people pleaser. So this would be a shadow version of the lover archetype, saying yes to everyone else's needs, even though you want to say no, quietly resenting it later. Trying to be loved becomes a strategy for survival and not for connection. And remember, these kind of things show up in our personal romantic relationships. These kind of things show up in our work relationships and our businesses, and they can really just hijack the way in which we show up in the world. So it's really important to just get an idea of who you are deeply from the unconscious. Who are you acting out? Which parts of you are running the show? Which archetypes are leading your life without you realizing it? A few other examples would be the controller. So this would be an inflated king or queen energy, needs everything to go their way, struggles to surrender or trust others. Control is often just disguised fear of vulnerability. King and queen can also become tyrannical. And it's so sneaky the way this stuff can sneak in on your life. Another example would be the disconnected dreamer, a collapsed lover. So now a deflated lover, feeling empty, purposeless, stuck in existential fatigue. The soul longs for meaning, but the ego keeps scrolling. Another one would be the avoidant mystic. So a detached magician, escaping into spirituality, intellect, or isolation instead of real intimacy. So avoidance then masquerades as enlightenment, but it's really fear of being seen. So if these don't really make a lot of sense to you, some of the simple ways of saying these are commonalities that Roberto Assagioli brought through in his subpersonality work are the critic, right? So being overly attached to your inner critic, being overly attached to your inner perfectionist, being overly attached to the victim within, feeling powerless, or the rebel, always needing to be in conflict. And then even the caregiver, something that is nurturing and sweet, can also be very self-depleting in a lot of ways too, right? So the idea is to find out which one of these is ruling your life. Typically, one or two of them take the driver's seat in our lives, and then the other ones don't even get a chance. That's really how it happens most of the time. So we can really easily slip in and out of these roles constantly, thinking that they are us, until we realize they're just voices within the psyche asking for integration. So it's not that any one single of these subpersonalities that you're battling with that might be causing anxiety under the surface, right? All of this is happening under the surface. So if you're experiencing fatigue and all of these issues or trouble in relationships and this kind of stuff, these subpersonalities are most likely ruling your life. And it's not that any one of them is bad, it's that it is in a shadow form. So if we start to integrate it over time and with patience, we can start to find an entirely different perspective towards life. And so the interesting thing is that these unconscious patterns don't just live in our heads, they manifest in the body and in our relationships as well, in our everyday lives. They can cause things like chronic fatigue that doesn't go away even when you rest, relationship conflicts that repeat even in different relationships. So certain things will follow you throughout different relationships, emotional highs and lows that feel unpredictable, feeling busy but unfulfilled. I always call this one running nowhere fast. So having a very busy life, but really not accomplishing much, drifting through life without direction or aliveness. Most people think that they're just anxious, burned out, or lazy, but these patterns aren't random. These are archetypal imbalances in the psyche, blind spots that quietly steer our choices until we learn to see them. This is one of my teachers that I had the pleasure of doing direct work with, Malidoma Some. He's a West African shaman from Burkina Faso. He's got some great quotes around purpose. And the reason why I bring these through is because all of the previously stated issues and ways in which we are disconnected from our highest self, our capital S self, you could say soul or psyche, keeps us from our purpose, keeps us from our dharmic work, our life purpose. Malidoma says, nobody comes to this world in this day and age for vacation. Everyone has a deep purpose. Healing comes when the individual remembers his or her identity, the purpose chosen in this world of ancestral wisdom, and reconnects with that world of spirit. But the problem is we can't even get tuned into our divine purpose if we're so caught up looping in our lives and our deep embedded psychological programming from our past. So we have to do something about it. You have to do something about it if you want to move forward with your divine dharmic work in life. So what's the solution? You need a guide. You need some kind of guide to help reflect back to you. You can be the most advanced practitioner in the world, but you're not going to see your own blind spots. All of us need some kind of a guide. My mindset coaching has to do with 3 pillars: awareness, reprogramming, and integration. With awareness, we have intention setting therapy like discussion calls. So it's like therapy calls meets shamanic work meets hypnosis and deep reprogramming. Having someone that can help reflect back to you and see where you're getting stuck, what you're not seeing. We move through these 3 phases. You learn to recognize the patterns that run your life, to transform them at the root, deep in the subconscious, not on the surface, not just with talk therapy. We have to go deep in and do some reprogramming. And with this, I always tap into these brainwave states. So delta would be full sleep. Beta is full awake awareness, aware consciousness. Alpha and theta are what we get the mind into in a state of deep, relaxed, calm meditation. This is a place of receptivity. Both of these are where you can implant new belief systems, new patterns. And it's a way to reprogram from the inside out. Because we can cycle for years and years on end here in beta, just talking about the problem over and over. But you're not going to get anywhere with that. You can say all the affirmations you want, but when you're here in your normal waking state and you're not trying to change at a subconscious level, no real change is going to occur. If you've been feeling that quiet pull to finally understand yourself, to stop repeating the same cycles, to feel truly grounded in who you are, like deep down, it's not random. That's the part of you that is really ready to grow. This is the work I do. I help people move from burnout and confusion into clarity, confidence, and a deep sense of purpose. So my question to you is, how does this land with you? What would real psychological, emotional change look like and feel like for you? How would your life change if you could let go of your old painful programming? What could you create with more clarity, more confidence? How would your relationship shift if you felt more whole from within? And who would you become with true freedom from old wounds? I've been doing this for quite a long time, and I've seen a lot of transformations occur right in front of my own eyes, myself included. So if this kind of work resonates with you, if you're ready to stop living on autopilot and step into conscious creation, book a free clarity call with me. We'll map out what real freedom could look like for you. And you've already taken the hardest step. You showed up. So looking forward to chatting with you. You just fill out your info, pick a time that works for you. It's a free call, and we'll chat. I'll find out a little bit more about your story, who you are, and we'll see if it's a fit. Much love.